Hey everybody, and welcome back to another episode. I'm your host, Brandon Cobb, co founder of HBG Capital. And today I've got Tony Lopes on the show. I am excited to talk about. We've got a lot to discuss here, from the election to some of the macroeconomic stuff to, why we're becoming a renter nation. He's got an awesome book. Tony is a first generation American. He's CEO of Dirty Boots Capital. He's a real estate professional, best selling author of the book, Freedom at Risk: How to Protect Your Personal and Financial Freedom. He's also a coach and a speaker. He earned his bachelor in science in mechanical engineering and an MBA at the University of Massachusetts. He's worked in the defense industry for over 19 years, managing multi-million-dollar programs, and he's built a portfolio of residential income properties that has allowed him to ultimately retire. I'm excited to jump in with his book with him today. Tony loves sharing his knowledge and experience so others can achieve financial independence and enjoy the same level of freedom he does. Tony, welcome to the show.
Brandon, thank you so much for having me on, and thank you for that warm welcome. Wow, this conversation is going to be a blast. So I encourage your listeners and your viewers to stay tuned. We're going to cover a lot of topics here. We already, before you hit the record button, we already started getting into it, which was already a lot of fun. We probably should have hit the record button then, because there was a lot of value shared. So I think your audience is going to have a ton of fun with this conversation.
I'm very excited to jump into it. We're going to talk about some really, I think, topics that are on everybody's mind right now, kind of where we're going, what's going to potentially happen with the election, which path are we going to go down depending on who gets elected. But before we jump in, for those that don't know you, what's your story?
Yeah, so maybe like a lot of your listeners and your audience out there, I'm probably very similar to them, right? I'm first generation American. My family migrated here to this country, and if you're not first generation American, maybe you're second generation. You can still relate in some way to your grandparents migrating to this country. So my parents came with little to nothing, right? I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth by any extent of the imagination. We were a very blue collar family. And that's really where the company name Dirty Boots really stems from. It's
Okay.
partly from that. But yeah, so my parents came here and they, kind of handed down the mantra to all the kids and said, hey, go to school, get a good job, you'll get a good education, and you'll have a great life. That was the mantra. And so me as a kid, I'm like, okay, I'll go to school, I'll get a great job, I get a go to school, get a great education, get a great job, and have a great life. But somewhere in between of getting a great education, getting a great job, I had a great job, and then I got laid off. And I was like, wait a minute, this isn't part of the mantra. What do I do now? So that gave me pause to kind of, reevaluate things and see if, where my future needed to be. Now, for me, freedom of time, freedom of making my own choices day in, day out was a big deal with me.
Yeah.
So anybody who knows me knows freedom is a big part of my life. And so yeah, so I wanted to create multiple streams of income for myself. And so that's what I ultimately ended up doing. Like I wasn't financially independent at that time that I got laid off. I had to go find another W-2 paying job, which I did, which was great. Okay, it afforded me the opportunity to leverage certain things as a W-2 employee to be able to get more properties into the portfolio, and then ultimately, like you had mentioned, retire at
Yeah.
the ripe old age of 44. So yeah, somewhere in all of that, I'm sure there's things your audience resonates with. But I'm no different than any other person out there listening to this. It's hard work. Some days are a grind, but if you do it and you do it right, you get to the other side and get to enjoy the fruits of all that you've developed. Yeah.
Let's fast forward here, because I know that the word financial freedom and retirement, that's a buzzword, right? If you're a business owner, somebody out there, that's what we're trying to get to, right? Where our investments produce the income we need to ultimately live and not have to be relying on a W-2 or a cubicle, or your business, making the income you need to take care of you and your family. What did that look like when you were 44? What was the buzz? How to describe this? What did your portfolio look like? How many multifamily or residential properties did you own? Like how much cash flow was each spitting off? Like, how much monthly income were your investments producing where you had this aha moment, like, "I've made it"?
Yeah, so there's in that question there's a lot to unpack. And so financial freedom, I'm going to first start there. Financial freedom means should mean different things to different people, right? What financial freedom is for me might not be the same for you or some of the
Mm,
listeners, right? For me, it was basically, being able to replace my W-2 income with some other form of investment that allowed me to have time freedom, right? Time to go hiking, go skiing when I wanted to, right? The best thing that I love to do is go skiing on a Tuesday, right? There was nobody on the lifts, there was nobody on the mountain. I could get like 30 runs in.
yeah,
It was beautiful, right? I wasn't going there on a Saturday or a Sunday. So this time freedom that I had when I retired was beautiful, right? I got to do things that, my life was full, and that's what I hope for a lot of folks. So for me, that exit point was I needed to have enough passive income through my real estate coming in to replace what my W-2 was paying for me.
yeah,
And for me being an engineer, right, trained as an engineer, I always wanted like a factor of safety of two. So I wanted, 2x of that passive income coming in because I knew, there'd be vacancies along the way and things like that, remodels. There was always a
yeah.
factor of safety of two. I wanted 2x my income coming in to so that I could leave my W-2 job. So that's what, freedom looked like to me, and that's kind of how I developed it or navigated through that field.
So what was the number? Was that like $120,000? Was that $250,000 in income annually? And then what did the portfolio look like? Was it 40 residential properties? Was it four or 500 multifamily units? Like, what did the portfolio look like, and like how much cash was it spitting off? Because I'm trying to get a general idea of like,
Yeah.
you spent a lot of time building the empire, right? Like, what does it need to look like?
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's gonna look different for everybody because, I didn't have kids, right? So
Yeah,
my costs were much less than maybe some other folks who were looking to put people through college and whatnot. So, but for me personally, my portfolio, and I'm glad you asked the question because you don't have to be investing mega million dollars into real estate to be able to get to the other side of personal freedom. I was buying, quads. I was buying a duplex. I was buying, a triplex, a 3-unit building. I was not buying during this time where I was investing in real estate alongside doing my W-2 job. I was not buying apartment complexes, right? So, by the time I had to make that decision whether I wanted to keep the W-2 or retire from that, I think I was in the high 20s. I might have had like maybe 26, 28 units,
okay.
right? So I did not have a lot of units, right? And I was
Mhm.
able to get to the other side and quit my day job with just having that many units. Now, the economics of things today are a little different,
Yeah.
but it still can be done. For me, what did that income look like? I think it had to be somewhere, probably around 10 grand a month. I needed
Mhm.
to be having in passive income because I was shedding my insurance, so I needed to pick up insurance on my own, and so there
Yeah.
was some different complexities there. But I think it's a case by case basis. Everybody needs to go through that math and through
Mhm.
that analysis to say, okay, if I need to make 10 grand this month, how many units do I need to do that? Right. And if
Yep.
I'm pulling in $300 a month on each unit, right? In terms of cash flow, it's just do the math and you get to the number of units you need.
Yeah, 100%. Thanks for sharing that because it gives someone to kind of shoot for, right? Because I think a lot of people who are hesitant to buy rentals or invest in real estate or do syndications, it helps to have like an end result in mind, and they kind of build their end result by hearing what a lot of other people's end result are. So thanks for sharing for that. So you had a little over 30 some odd units, kind of 10 grand a month is what you needed to feel comfortable. Obviously, the economy's changed a lot. There's a lot going on. I know that the election is looming over a lot of decisions that people are going to make. And I know you're a real really big macroeconomic guy. So let's have some fun and kind of play around with this, right? Because we don't really know who's going to get elected, and we don't know exactly what that person is going to do if they're in office. We've probably got some ideas, but let's go through the path here because I know a lot of people are wondering this. Let's say that, you know, Trump versus Biden here. Let's say Biden gets reelected. What do you think is going to be the immediate reaction of the market? And what do you think the next 1 to 4 years look like for the economy and you know his policies under his leadership?
So strictly for Biden, I think it's going to be even more socialism, I'm going to say, more of a warm blanket for society, which is not necessarily a good thing. But I always look at it from the standpoint of I stand on the edge of the coin and I say, if Biden gets elected, is this good for me? If Trump gets elected, is this going to be good for me? So strictly, since I know a lot of your folks are in business and real estate, your listeners here, I look at Biden getting elected. If you're a business person or you're a real estate investor, I think that's a good thing. I, and I say that because you look at some of the policies, like Biden has this student forgiveness, student loan forgiveness policy that he wants to do more of. Do more of. He's already done some, but he wants to do more. So what does that do? If he does more of that over the next 4 years, if he does get reelected, that's going to put more money in people's pockets, right? And that's going to be, potentially spending money instead of paying for that loan. They can then go get an apartment, right? Because we're at the highest point in history, higher than, any of the world wars. We're at the highest point in history. 53% of 18 to 29-year-olds are still living at home with their parents.
Yeah.
They cannot afford to rent an apartment on their own. But if Biden institutes, more student loan forgiveness, these young people, 18 to 29 years old, they're going to have more money in their pocket to be able to go off and become renters, right? Instead of paying those student loans. Do I agree with that policy or not? That's irrelevant, right?
Yeah. Now we're
I,
not
I,
talking about that here.
Right.
Just
We need to divorce ourselves because there's too many conversations where, I get into where people are like, that's not right or right or wrong. It doesn't have any bearing in, these decisions that we make as investors. We just got to see it for what it is. And so I think that's going to be good for not just real estate investors, for also businesses, because now more money in people's pocket. Uh, is a good thing. People are going to spend more money. They're going to go to restaurants more. They're going to buy more things online on Amazon because they have more money to spend. So that's a pretty simple one. So I think it's good for the audience here to see, in terms of Biden getting elected. I think that's a good thing in a lot of ways.
Yeah, 100%. I know he's been criticized a lot for his green policies. You know, hey, shutting down the oil pipelines, and a lot of people are basically pointing a finger at him to say like, you're the guy that caused inflation because it was a is an energy problem, right? You know, when gas prices go up and the prices of oil go up, right? You know, there's your transportation cost to get all the goods to the store is more expensive, and that just gets passed along to the consumer. And I mean, we've had some crazy inflation. Of course, you know, Trump printed all this money during his, and so it's like hard to really pinpoint kind of what caused the inflation. But he's recently trying to take some measures to kind of keep inflation kind of under wraps. If he gets elected, I mean, do you see this being a good or bad thing for inflation? Because that's right now what seems to be the lever that the Fed is looking at to really determine whether or not they want to raise or lower interest rates, which is what everybody's looking at right now to pull the trigger on investments.
I think if he gets reelected, that's a bad thing for inflation. I think that will just continue to keep inflation, if not where it is, it might even trend a little higher
Yeah.
because that administration is about putting more dollars into people's pockets. And
Mhm.
people today, society today, is not, they're not savers, right? They don't save like, your parents and my parents used to save. They're just not. They're consumers. And so putting more money into the pockets of people, sure, sounds like a great political move to be able to do that, but that does nothing for inflation. that's actually going to hurt us in terms of inflation.
Yeah.
And
No, I,
you actually bring up a great point about oil, right? Their stance, the Biden administration's stance on oil and how they want to limit the amount of fracking and different things out there. You know, oil, that is the basis of everything, everything. And so the more they do that, limit the energy production, that can hurt some businesses. But as far as real estate investors, to the most part helps real estate investors because it keeps energy prices high. The Biden administration, their policies keeps energy prices high. And so in terms of home ownership costs go up as a result of, if you have to replace your asphalt roof, it's going to be more expensive. If you have to replace your driveway, it's more expensive. Your siding, your appliances,
yeah,
everything in a home the basis is oil, right? So as a homeowner, your costs are going to go up with the Biden administration, but that just pushes people into being more of a renter and
yeah,
staying a renter for longer. So that's why I look at both sides of the coin and I say, am I okay with this if Biden gets reelected? Yeah, I am, because that just puts more clients in my camp in terms of renters looking to rent my apartments.
yeah. Makes a lot of sense. All right. So Trump gets elected now. Option number two. What do you think that the next, 1 to 4 years look like? What's the immediate market reaction if a Trump election happens, and what are the next 1 to 4 years look like in your opinion? In your opinion, for the economy?
So I would this is wow, I gotta be careful. I hope my words don't come back to bite me, but I do think
This
uh,
is all speculation, right? We don't know. We don't have a magic crystal ball, but we do know that each president is going to take the economy in two different directions, and that's all. We're not talking about whether
yeah,
we like one more than the other here, right? We're
yeah,
just
yeah.
saying what are going to be implications of this guy getting elected versus the other ones.
Yeah, so I think with Trump, I think there's going to be more benefits for businesses. We saw during his first term where he gave a lot of benefits to business owners. So if you're a business owner out there, I think you'll probably see more favorable conditions there with a Trump versus a Biden. I think in terms of like real estate investors, I think you will probably benefit as well because Trump has been known to strong arm Jay Powell and the Federal Reserve in terms of, I don't want to say manipulating, but keeping rates low. So I think he'll go back to that because his platform is going to be, we already know, make America great again and create more jobs and create more businesses and more prosperity. And the only way you're going to do that right now is to get rates down. So
Yeah,
people, borrow money, create businesses, invest in businesses. There's so many folks sitting on the sidelines right now because the cost of money is too high, right? The cost of that money to go to the bank to get a loan is just too much, and so they're not developing. They're pulling back on a lot of things, not just real estate, but also businesses. And so I think Trump is gonna, flip that on its head. I think he's gonna work to get interest rates lower,
yeah.
and that's gonna help both camps. And so that's why I like to, kind of stand on the edge of the coin and look and say, is Biden good for me? Is Trump good for me? I think as a business person, investor, I think there's some positivity in both of them.
Yeah. It's kind of funny because real estate's one of those things that does benefit from inflation, right? So if you have a Biden election, I agree with you. I don't think that he's going to continue doing what he's doing, green policies, maybe make some tweaks here and there to help control energy, but I don't think that inflation is really going to get under control based on the
Yeah.
policies that he's implementing. That's just the reality and what he said. But that helps real estate on one end, right? But on the other end, it kind of hurts it because of the interest rates, right? And I feel like the interest rates are having a bigger impact on real estate investors and real estate entrepreneurs than say inflation is helping them, right? And so I'm looking at it that camp, and I think you're right. Like Trump's like, drill, baby, drill. He's come out and said that he is going to get the energy prices under control, which is going to have a direct effect on inflation, which will have a direct effect on the interest rates for sure. So very different policies here. I want to get into your book, Freedom at Risk: How to Protect Your Personal and Financial Freedom. We were talking a bit about this. There's a lot of really great information in the book. You said that this book, like, there's a lot of bits and pieces of information that people know and they understand, but they struggle to put those together to see the bigger picture and make more informed decisions. Tell us a little bit about how your book addresses that.
Well, I appreciate you bringing it up. It's our freedoms are at risk wherever you turn. They just are, and it's not just the politicians putting our freedoms at risk, right, Brandon? We can talk all day long about what they're doing, and they are putting our freedoms. And it doesn't matter whether you're a D or an R. It's the way it is, unfortunately. But you know there's a bunch of other ways our freedoms are put at risk, right? Society, us, ourselves, put our freedoms at risk. We want to, blame the government all too often for issues, and we need to take responsibility as far as like a society, right?
Like what, though? For example,
So for example, like I remember down in Uvalde, Texas, there was a school shooting, and like one of the first things that came out was, oh, we need to go to the government and have them put more police at the school. We have to put bars on the windows. We have to fortify, and we have to like okay, so that shooter is just going to go from a school to a church to a synagogue to a mall to a plaza. So where does it end? Where does it end, society, right? We, society, need to take responsibilities, right? When we're raising our kids, instead of when you're driving in a car with them to school, to an event, whatever it is, instead of the kid playing on their Game Boy or their cell phone or whatever it is, you know what? That's great quiet time. I remember great conversations with my parents sitting in the car, right? And getting, just getting to know your kid, what's going on in their head, what they're concerned about, what they want to do when they grow up, right? Use that as an opportunity, right? You're in a car, you got, put down the devices, you got nothing else to do. Have a conversation with your kid. Know what's going on. If they're being bullied, you probably want to know that so they don't end up, going off the reservation and getting a gun or whatever, or taking drugs, right? We hear
yeah.
about the drug crisis. Yeah, yeah, I get it. But you know what? Talk to your kids. Take that time instead of coming home and sitting down in front of the TV and watching a game or sitcoms or whatever it is. Take that time, invest in your kids, find out what's going on. The politicians aren't coming to save you in that way. The politicians aren't going to talk to
Yeah.
your kids and raise your kids, right? You gotta do the mom and dad thing and spend that time with them. So I mean that's part of where society falls down. They expect the government to solve all our problems, and that's not the role of government.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And it's sad to see it's like, how do you end the negative feedback loop? Because a lot of times, if I was having a conversation with a family member, I won't say, and this family member had done some things in the past that really ticked off some other family members. And if you were to look at it from some of the things that they had done, if you look at it just blatantly two dimensional, just looking at straight the actions that they took, be like, wow, that was bad. Like, they should not have done this thing. How could they have not made trips ever, not once, to go and visit, like their grandkids, for example. But if you look at their background and how they raised and the information they had at time, and more importantly, if you look at the relationship that they had with their mom and dad and how they were raised, and I was talking with this person, and she was just telling me the background, how her parents never hugged her and were very conservative and never kissed her or anything, because again, 65, 70 years ago, that we didn't have all these books and stuff available to us to show how you should be raising your kids, but you could see that lack of affection had an effect, and multiply that action by 30, 40, 50 years, that relationship with their parents, that leaves an imprint. It leaves a psychological impression that she then acts a certain way to, her kids. And here you have this result that everyone's looking at two-dimensional going, oh, wow, I don't know how she could have ever just not, visited her grandkids, for example. And so it's really interesting. What other, in what other respects does your, book talk about this?
Yeah, yeah, thank you. Yeah, so obviously, so we talk about politics, we talk about society, how we're putting our own freedoms at risk, but we also talk about things like we get into talking about technology. Is technology good or bad? Right? Technology is good in many ways. I mean, man, I use technology all over the place, and it's great. But technology can also be bad in the sense that you look at things like, dating apps. You swipe one way, you're in a relationship. You swipe another way, you're out of a relationship. It creates this environment where you're non-committal. And so now, as a result, we're conditioned, society gets conditioned with this technology to say, oh, okay, I'm going to get married, and then marriages don't last.
Mhm.
And so technology is good in a lot of ways, but it's also bad. So we just need to like understand these different dynamics. So technology is another one we talk a lot about. We talk a lot about the education system, right? I have an entire chapter just about the education system. And obviously I want folks to go to school, get educated. There's a lot of goodness that comes out of that, but there's a lot of shortfalls in today's education system. They don't teach basic economics. They don't teach, basic budgeting. Uh,
Yeah.
so kids get out of school, and I'm not even going to say get out of high school. They get out of college, right? They get out of college not knowing how to financially manage themselves, how to make investments. I just had one person come to me recently, you know, started a job. They're older, which is actually quite sad because they're actually older. They're probably closer to 50, and they're sharing with me, I don't know how to choose the right investments in my 401k plan.
Yeah.
And I'm like, wow, this is pretty scary, right? That people are struggling in this way, and I'm sure there's many, many, many more people who are struggling, but the the high schools and the colleges, the education system is not preparing people enough for their future, right? To be able to protect themselves. And so we as society, we need to help each other. And that's why I love coming on, these shows with you, Brandon, and others, because we need to help each other, right? You and I, we don't profit from doing these podcasts. We're doing this because we have a love for serving people and wanting to help people see a different side of thing. The politicians again aren't coming to save you, right?
Yeah.
Your neighbor probably isn't coming to save you. We have to be out there helping people think different, right? Not to use the Apple slogan, but we need people to think different and start to take control of their own lives in all these different ways. So that's where, the book, which took, I'm going to say about, it took me about 4 years to research all these different things. It wasn't done lightly. It wasn't like I penned it in 6 months.
Wow.
It was 4 years. Once I was retired, I had a little bit of free time. Uh, so I took 4 years to do a whole bunch of research, and then it took me at least another year to uh to actually create it, edit, do all the graphics, all that sort of stuff. So it was a 5 year process. And so we get into all these different things. And that's just the first part of the book, part one, where we talk about helping people kind of recalibrate to all the ways our freedoms are being stolen. And I'm not talking doom or gloom. There's a lot of hope and opportunity that is spread throughout this book. This is not a doom and gloom book, but there is a recalibration that we need to help people with in the first 5 chapters, the first part of the book, how our freedoms are being stolen. But then very quickly we jump into part two is, hey, there's a lot of hope and opportunity, and we give a whole bunch of like a la carte package ideas in terms of, here's different ways you can protect yourself. Real estate is just one of them, right? Having a business is another, right? But we encourage folks in a lot of different ways. We talk about asymmetric plays, which is
Mhm.
something, kids should come out of school and they should know what that term is, and they don't. So an asymmetric, think back to Bitcoin when you could buy Bitcoin for like a nickel.
Yeah.
And now it's like $1 bajillion, right? That's an asymmetric play where if you
Yeah.
buy it at a nickel, you have very little to lose. But if
Yeah.
it goes up tremendously, you can make a ton of money. So there's asymmetric plays out there, right? So this is all the hope and opportunity and ideas that we're putting out there for people. If you don't resonate with real estate, that's okay. I'm not looking to make people into real estate moguls, right? If you do resonate with that, great. We have a lot to talk about. But if you don't, I give you so many other ideas to go off and think about.
I love these 4 areas that you're talking about, how we're creating a cage around ourselves, right? Like how we are losing our freedoms. You named politics, you named the society, you named technology, and you named education, right? I mean, those are 4 extremely powerful vehicles that, if not taken lightly, you're right, we can't imprison ourselves, and we're kind of in a prison right now, and we don't even know it. With all the success that you've had, financial freedom by 44, real estate portfolios, I can tell that you're genuinely, just interested in helping and doing the world. What's next for you, Tony?
What's next? So right now, me personally, I'm looking to invest internationally, which is something I haven't done yet. I in the States, I believe in being in landlord-friendly states. So I'm invested in New Hampshire, Florida, Arizona, states like that. Um, and I have multiple residencies that allow me freedom within the US, but I also want to get something outside of the US as far as a potential personal residence that maybe I do short-term rental with or something, kind of play around with that.
Yeah,
Um, but the thing I like about international is you get such a different perspective on the world,
yeah,
and also on the United States, where we are today in the United States. And there's a lot of negative stuff in the news, but man, there's so much positive here in the United States. And the reason why people still flock to the United States, so much opportunity, people invest in the United States. There's talk about the BRICS currency, that Brazil, Russia, China, India, Saudi Arabia are working towards. Let me tell you, nobody wants to own rubles, right? Nobody wants to own the yuan, right? Uh, For the most part. People want dollars.
yeah.
People want dollars, and they want to invest those dollars in the United States. So when you go overseas, and I've spent a fair amount of time overseas recently, you get such a great perspective of the opportunity we have here in the United States that we cannot squander, right? Either for ourselves or for our children, right? The next generation. I talk a lot about the next generation and how we need to do things to help the next generation because there's so many forces working against them, unfortunately. So it's our job as almost as like the custodians to help that next generation. And so, me spending time overseas, that's my next step to be able to help not just myself, but also my investors, other people see the opportunities we have here in this country, which I think are huge, tremendous.
Very cool. And Tony, if people want to learn more about you or learn more about your book, Freedom at Risk: How to Protect Your Personal and Financial Freedoms, where can they go?
The best thing is to check out my website, dirtybootscapital.com. Has a whole bunch of information there, a bunch of links. If you want to have a one-on-one chat with me, just to do a deeper dive, maybe into your own personal situation and just talk about that, just book a 30-minute free call with me. Super easy. And we just yak about your particular situation. I love doing that. I just had a conversation with a nice young couple about their farm in Vermont. They're struggling, and so we just man, they left that conversation with gold. And so it's something you can tell here, like I have a passion for this, as do you.
Yeah.
We just want to be able to help people think differently. And yeah, so that's the best place to go. If they want to shoot me an email, they can just shoot me an email at Tony Lopes, Lopes, Tony Lopes at dirtybootscapital.com. I respond to all my emails. So yeah, let's connect there.
Yeah, we'll make sure that gets posted in the show notes. Tony, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Thank you so much, Brandon.
Hey, and if you got value from this episode, show Tony and me some love, leave us a review, subscribe, and share this with your friends and family. We'll see you guys next time.